Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your Sun in Taurus and Leo rising. And this could be somebody who is very artistic, for instance, because the Sun Taurus is ruled by Venus, and that has an association with the arts. And the rising sign is Leo, and Leo is ruled by the sun, so that means your ruler is the sun. And the sun is a creative force, a life force. In astrology, Leo and therefore the sun rule the fifth house of creativity and even creating children. So in the tarot, the sun card, you will see in the Rider-Waite deck the depiction of a child, because it's associated with children and creating children or conceiving children. So that's a different sort of creation. So that's the thing that really jumps out at me. This is going to be two placements that are very prominent, that are in the fixed modality. And that means that you have a very stubborn core personality trait to yourself. And maybe that's the negative way of looking at it. Maybe we could say consistency, a kind of like having a lot of endurance, having the ability to be persistent, which is really important. I mean, you can have other factors and other traits that are conducive to success in life, like being a doer, for instance, which would correspond to the cardinal signs in astrology. And yet, even somebody who is capable of starting something, they may not continue with it because they may give up too quickly if they don't see results. And there is definitely a very persistent quality in fixed signs like Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So the rising sign is the cusp of the first house, which is the house of the self. So even like a person's physical appearance can be kind of like seen through the rising sign. Although I do feel as a person gets into their 30s and beyond that maybe the sun sign is more influential in that regard. But for the first part of adulthood, and even younger than that, maybe as a teenager, you may really resemble a Leo. How will that look physically? Well, I wouldn't, when I think of Leo, I don't think of actual physical features, although it's interesting because Lucille Ball had a son in Leo, and she was known as a redhead. And I always think of like Aries, you know, as being the sign associated with red hair. But I would say any fire sign, but for some reason, especially Aries and Leo, because they represent the seasons of the spring and the summer, which is more about when the temperature is hot, you know, at least in the northern hemisphere. That's how our time of the year is. And so it's really more about the personality. You know, Leo is larger than life, but one quality that you could pretty much talk about is hair, because Leo is a lion in terms of symbolism, And what does the lion have? The lion has a mane, right? And guess who has Leo rising? Who's a famous person? Donald Trump. And what is Donald Trump known for? His hair. Now, some people may think his hair is very unusual, and uh, maybe there are some people that like it, but the point is it's something that people talk about. And if I had known I was going to do this, I kind of did this on the spur of the moment, I might have looked up some famous celebrities to see if, who has Leo rising that I could point to as talking about that. But even, mentioning somebody with the sun in Leo like Lucille Ball, known as being a redhead, who actually was not a natural redhead, but it just suited her as a trademark so well. The point is that there is a very flashy quality to Leo, and I always joke and say that I think of Leo rising as the fashion equivalent of somebody in Las Vegas, where there's a lot of lights and glitter. I mean, just that kind of over the top quality, the show busy quality that we associate with Leo, and however that would show up as a dressing style. And so, sparkly things, shiny, maybe like very bright colors, maybe gold lame or velour, or things that just are very eye catching. And the reason that this is significant is because Taurus as a sign is not one that you would associate with being extroverted. Taurus is a feminine sign and Leo is a masculine sign, earth versus fire. And so when you have this combination and the fire is on the ascendant, you're going to see somebody who is coming across in a very extroverted way, but it's not necessarily who they are when it all comes down to it. They're really more introverted than they let on. And, in my own chart, my sun is in Sagittarius, a fire sign, and I have Taurus rising. So, because I have the moon in Virgo, the earth element is very strong, and I am not extroverted. I am more introverted. And we have to say, though, that the rising sign is more of the persona, or you could even say the facade. It's not really the true self or the inner self that we would associate with the sun sign. So the reason that this is so important is that when people get to know you better, they may be surprised to see how quiet you really can be. And look to your moon sign to kind of get a better feel for this. And even some of those inner planets, like for instance, Taurus is adjacent to Aries. If you have inner planets in Aries, like Mars or Mercury or something like that, or Venus, you may be more like that Leo energy, maybe quite extroverted, and it shows up even with your personal life. When you're really like letting people in on your true self. And the moon sign too, because that can be your emotional nature. If you have it in fire, you're going to be more like that Leo ascendant. If you have it in water, you're going to be a more of a quiet person when you're with people that you let your guard down with, and you're more intimate with. So it is quite a contrast on that level. But it can allow you to have a lot of confidence. It can give you the ability to really go after what you want. You may have leadership abilities. And I think that this is a combination of somebody who is hardworking. I do feel that you would have a natural affinity for the arts, for performing, because there's that show-offy quality with the rising sign where you want attention. So somebody who doesn't have to be dragged on stage, who, maybe from a young age you sought the spotlight. And that can be, you might have talent in some area like that. Taurus rules the throat, so perhaps you are a singer. And by the way, when I say these things, I'm not saying that you're doing it for a living. You may go to open mics or something like that, but you still, it's like you have to have that, you have to be on stage, even if it's just in an open mic, even if it's just at the local theater. It doesn't matter, and you're not getting paid for it, and you're just doing it for a hobby. It's just something that you feel compelled to do. And that would actually be a healthy way to, express or, to fulfill this need. Because when people are wanting attention, but they don't know how to do, go to satisfy that in a constructive manner, they can end up creating drama, so that people, forcing other people to pay attention to them, but in a negative way. And with this combination, I think that it's safe to say that this is a romantic combination. And if you're not careful, you can find that you're attracting drama in relationships, because I feel that these two signs are, I would say, in my top 3 lustful signs. And I would include Aries on that list. And when a sign is very lusty, now with Taurus, this is because of the, the earth element, and Venus is about pleasure. And actually, with Leo, since Leo rules the 5th house, one of the qualities of the 5th house is recreational sex. It's a house of pleasure. So recreational sex is sex for the sake of pleasure. But the weird thing is, it's also the house of conceiving children. So you could say that is for a higher purpose, if you will. But anyway, so people who tend to fall in lust very easily, they become attracted to somebody, and it's hard for them to process whether or not they're in love with them, or they're just turned on by them. They can get involved in relationships for the wrong reasons, and some of those could be quite volatile. Because they're one-dimensional, and the people may be kind of using each other. They're not really in love, and therefore it's not a good situation ultimately for them to be in, and it can create its own set of problems. So the key is to be aware of the kind of relationships you're getting involved with, and the reason why. And if there is a tendency to have negative relationships, to really identify why this is, because this combination can be very steadfast when they're in love. But of course, in order to be in love, you have to actually be with somebody who is suitable for you. And when people tend to be physically attracted first and foremost to somebody, and not necessarily having other things in common, that can lead to, like I said, these drama-filled relationships. Another thing that I think these signs have in common is that they both are jealous. Out of the two, I would say that Taurus is the one that we would associate with being possessive, because Taurus rules the second house, which is the house of earned income, but also the house of possessions. And so a Taurus person tends to see their loved ones as possessions too. And this can extend even to friendships. This is just how Taurus feels about people, is that it sounds bad to say that you feel that you own people, but it's more like um, they belong to you. But this can be especially true in relationships with your significant other, because you may, especially if you get married, and I think Taurus people tend to want to get married and not just live with someone, because they want to have that ownership, and they feel like, okay, I put a ring on it, or that's the sign that you belong to me. We have this contract. Because Taurus is an earth sign, it's about tangibility, the tangibility factor. And so all of these outer designations that are supposed to symbolize a person's commitment, like a wedding ring or a wedding contract, a marriage contract, license, um, can be comforting to a Taurus, because they feel like it gives them more security and keeps that person close to them. Now, I would beg to differ, but that is something that a Taurus person would really value. And so with Leo, I think that's another sign. I think being a fixed sign, both of these signs being fixed signs, trying to get something nailed down so that it doesn't change, it doesn't go away, is what fixed signs want to do. So the idea of security, even when it comes to relationships, is very appealing. It's not really, um, it's not a guarantee, and it's not realistic as far as I'm concerned, but it still can be something that the person wants. And so they go after it, in other words. So when you do fall in love, you can stay very committed to that person. And I would say that if the relationship were to dissolve at some point, you wouldn't necessarily bounce back easily, because fixed signs are not fickle. They're not changeable, and they're not shifting in the wind. So this goes for everything, that you may have difficulty with transitions because you are very rooted in place, and you like things to stay the same. And this is something definitely to challenge within yourself, because if it's excessive, it can make a person stagnant and resistant to change. And I personally feel that life is about our expansion. And in order to expand, in order to experience growth, we have to always be willing to take in new information and not just kind of do the same old, same old. You may like to repeat things in life. You may go to your favorite restaurant and you don't want to try a new restaurant. You may want to always use the same shampoo and you don't want to try a new one. Maybe there's only a set amount of food that you like to eat and you don't want to try new things. And so that can, create some challenges, because you may be too set in your ways. And like I said, if you do have a history of relationships that haven't worked out, it may be because you're choosing the wrong type of person, and yet it may be hard for you to alter that because, that's just what you've always done, so you just continue to do the same old, same old. In terms of professions, I mentioned artistic careers. In addition to that, you may be interested in perhaps some kind of, if you're doing something in an entrepreneurial arena, perhaps you would like to open a restaurant or something like that. Taurus, I think, is connected to food. And I know Taurus people like their food. So with the Leo rising, this may be something that combines like entertainment. Maybe it's a nightclub or a restaurant bar that has an open mic, so you can always have musicians there, always have music, always have fun. Maybe you work in a casino. Taurus, money, and Leo, I think the fifth house is speculation, like gambling. So you might like that kind of thing. Anything that has entertainment attached to it, either you doing the entertaining yourself or working in that field where it is involved, even like behind the scenes. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.